Councillor Glancy, it has just turned 6 o'clock. Sarah is still working with Councillor Posnett to get her on.
Okay. Right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our remote planning meeting. First of all, as usual, a little bit of general housekeeping. I'm Councillor Margaret Glancy, Chair of Planning. Prior to this evening's meeting, we have been testing the technology and confirmed the speakers are in attendance and can be heard. I can also confirm that I can see and hear my fellow participating members this evening, apart from one who is currently trying to join the meeting, but we'll have an update on that shortly. I'd like to introduce the members present at the present moment, and they are Councillor Bindloss, Councillor Brown, Councillor Chandler, Councillor Faulkner, Councillor Glancy, myself, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Holmes, and we're waiting for Councillor Posnett to join us, Councillor Smedley, Councillor Steadman and Councillor Wood. I will now ask members to confirm that they can see and hear the proceedings and other attendees. If I go through that list again, if you could confirm that you can see and hear the proceedings this evening, and you've unmuted everybody. Thank you very much, Natasha. Councillor Bindloss?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brown? You're on. Yeah.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Faulkner?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Glancy, yes. Councillor Higgins?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Posnett, we're waiting to see. Councillor Smedley?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Steadman?
Yes, Chair.
And Councillor Wood?
Yes, Chair.
Right, welcome everybody. We have a team of officers present here this evening. We have Adele Wiley, our Director of Governance and Regulatory Services. We're awaiting the arrival of Bob Power, who is our Solicitor for the Council. Assistant Director for Strategic Planning and Regulatory Services, Jim Worley. Our Development Manager, Louise Parker. And members of our Democratic Services team, Natasha Taylor and Sarah Evans. So welcome everybody. As usual, if members wish to speak on anything, please use the raise hand facility on your screen, and a member of Democratic Services, probably Natasha, will alert me to that, and I may well spot it myself on the right hand side of my screen. Members voting, please note a remote member participating in a vote will cast his or her vote as if participating in a recorded vote. I will ask members alphabetically for their vote, for, against or abstain. All microphones will be unmuted whilst the vote is being recorded. Following the vote, all microphones will be returned to mute. Disruption to remote conferencing. I refer you to the remote meeting procedure rules. In the event of a link failure for all attendees, I will call a short adjournment for up to 5 minutes. If the link cannot be re-established, the meeting shall be adjourned to a later date. In the event of a link failure to individual members, the remote members will be deemed to have left the meeting at the point of failure of the equipment. And if the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption would be that the meeting should continue to deal with the items providing the meeting remains quorate. If there is a disruption with a member's connectivity, Solicitor to the Council or Adele Wiley will determine whether a member has heard enough of the debate to be able to lawfully vote, depending on the particular circumstances and how much the member has missed. Please note this meeting is being recorded, and remember it is being live streamed. I'd be grateful if you could turn your phones to silent or turn them off. Thank you. At the moment, I have no apologies for absence, but as I've said before, we are still awaiting for Councillor Posnett to join the meeting. I think we've got a bit of a technology problem going on. Declarations of interest. Please note the content of the advice on members' interests, and if you think you have a personal, either non-pecuniary or pecuniary interest, or indeed bias, please state that now. We have hands up. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I will be leaving the meeting for the first item in relation to the Black Horse and speaking as a ward councillor, because I am supporting the community on this one. Okay.
Okay, that's brilliant. From past meetings, Councillor Posnett has always declared an interest because of Leicestershire County Council. Can we take that as read, or do we have to wait for Councillor Posnett to declare it? I'll ask Adele that question. Should she join the meeting at any point? Still on mute.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we'll wait for Councillor Posnett to state that. So once she enters the meeting, then she can do that during the item if she's taking part in it. Otherwise, she can move to the next item and do it at the start of that.
Okay, that just want to double check before I go any further. Thank you. Mr. Worley, you have your hand raised. Did you want to say anything?
Only in case Adele hadn't got. I think, fortunately enough, we have no items tonight that encounter county council interest anyway.
Yeah. That's what I thought, but I just thought I'd double check before we go any further. Thank you. Oh, well, here we go. Welcome.
So I'm in. Okay.
Right. Welcome, welcome, Councillor Posnett.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy.
Welcome. Just to recap, I've just gone through the declarations of interest. Do you have any declarations to declare before we go on to item 3? Okay.
I do actually. I've got two. My first one is as a member of Leicestershire County Council. I've got a non-prejudicial interest if anything comes up. And the other one is the application for the Black Horse at Grimston. A complaint has been made about me to the council solicitor, stating that I am a member. I've got a preconceived admission about that because I belong to the group, the Black Horse group. Well, I categorically do not. I have never joined that group.
Is that a Facebook group?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I have never joined that group. And the other allegation is that I liked a tweet that was sent out saying that the community were getting behind this. And yes, I liked that because I think it's a good idea when communities get involved. I did not comment on it, and I have not made my mind up about how I will vote on this issue. So that is just what I wanted to bring before, that I have not made up my mind about this, and I just want to listen to the debate.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification.
Sorry it was involved.
Oh no, it's best to clear it up before anything further happens. Okay. Right, so we've done declaration of interest. The next item is
Councillor Holmes has her hand.
Yes, we have indeed.
Before you move on.
Well done, well spotted there, because I was busy sort of rumbling on. We have two, Councillor Holmes and Jim Worley. So who was first? Do we know?
Well, I don't mind which one, but our solicitor said that it was mentioned that I'd got an interest in Grimston pub. Certainly had when I lived there for 22 years, but 30 years later, I have no interest whatsoever. So I absolutely have no interest in the pub at all. But before, when I lived next door to it, brilliant pub. But that's as far as I go, but it was a very long time ago.
Okay, thank you. Did Mr. Worley want to come in then? I saw your hand up briefly. No, okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Right, well, thank you for that. We'll now move on to agenda item 3, which is the list of applications.
Councillor Glancy, I I will now at this point move Councillor Brown into the attendees, if that's okay, and obviously we'll invite him back at the required time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you.
No. Before we start with item 3.1, just to advise that item 3.3 has been withdrawn from the agenda this evening. So we've only have 2 applications, which is 3.1 and 3.2. Okay. The first one is 20/00391 It's 3 Main Street, Grimston. And I believe Louise Parker is the officer who's going to address the committee this evening. Thank you.
That's correct, Chair. Thank you. So before I start, can I just check that you can both hear me and see the presentation in front of you?
Yes, I can. So
That's
if I
lovely.
can, it does, everybody else can.
Thank you. So the application site is a public house in Grimston. There is currently a residential flat above and land and outbuildings to the rear. The Black Horse is a non-designated heritage asset set within the conservation area. The proposal retains a smaller public house, which is highlighted in green along here. The red here and the purple here, they show 2 times 2 bed conversions. There's a blue line here, which shows bin storage for both 2-bedroom dwellings. And the yellow here shows car parking and turning. As you can see from the ground floor plan, it is the garage and storage area that are to be converted. So this section along here will become bedrooms and associated living. Oh, so I apologise. And it is also along here. The existing snug and bar area, they'll also be converted, and a retained bar and kitchen area will be formed using the lounge, toilets and associated areas here. The 4-bed flat to the first floor remains largely unaltered, and internal works will subdivide one of the bedrooms and create a landing area. So the only alteration is this wall here. The elevations also remain largely unaltered, with no change to the frontage and only minor alterations proposed on other elevations in the form of windows and doors. The applicant has submitted this photo to demonstrate that parking can be accommodated from the proposed dwellings. It should be noted that we have received comments from the County Highway Authority, and they have requested scale drawings which demonstrate that the parking meets the required standards. This could be done by way of condition. And that was the last slide. To conclude, the application is recommended for refusal on 2 grounds. The first being that the proposal does not meet an identified proven local need and would be contrary to policy SS3 of the local plan. The second is that the development would result in a loss of a valuable community facility to the detriment of the life of the community and would be contrary to policy C7 of the Melton local plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Members, do you have any questions for the officers before we embark upon listening to the speakers? Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, Louise, it might feature more in debate, but can you just show me the proposal and namely just the toilet area, please? Because it looked quite small, and I just wanted to know if you knew how many, well, cubicles or whatever it was, because it just looked as if there was 1 toilet, but I think I did see a break in it. If you could show that, please.
Yeah, not a problem. Just bear with me 1 moment.
And if you know how many cubicles it is, or
so. Okay, so can you see the screen here? So this part here is the proposed retained bar, which I'm outlining now. There's a section along here which forms a lobby into a kitchen, and this part here is WC's. So it would appear to be one there and one there. If you can see that part just there. Is that clear enough, Councillor Higgins?
No, is that okay, Councillor Higgins? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right, any further questions? Oh, Councillor Holmes, we have your hand up.
Thank you. Right, two, I just noticed this one, to go on from what Councillor Higgins asked, the kitchen, and then the WC next to it. You can't have that. It's not, you won't be able to do that. You'd have to have two doors. You can't just have a loo and next to the kitchen. Anyway, that wasn't what I was asking. In between the pub and Horton House is the access to Hillside Farm. And it's the right of way to Hillside Farm. So would that always be, because if it was a working farm, you wouldn't be able to get up there if cars didn't park within. I don't know whether there's any provision made that it would have to be empty, you know, that it would actually be clear at all times. I don't know whether anybody's thought about that, but that's actually a fact.
Okay, thank you. Right. Did you want to respond to that, Louise, or leave that for the debate when we get round to it?
I think that's possibly something for members' debate upon.
I think so too. Thank you very much for raising it anyway. We have this evening 4 speakers for this this application. The first one being Councillor Henrietta Maddox-Wright, who's Chair of Grimston, Saxelby and Shoby Parish Council. If you'd like to bring, thank you. Good evening. If you'd like to unmute.
Okay, there you are.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the committee again. You have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
The Black Horse Pub is the most prominent and important building in Grimston after the church. It's central to the village geographically and spiritually, and has served as a much-loved meeting place for many years. It's the only pub in the 3 villages of Grimston, Saxelby and Shoby, and the only pub within easy walking distance. The pub, church and village hall are the only remaining amenities in Grimston. Home buyers look for nearby amenities when searching for where to live, and established residents rely upon them. A good village pub can reach all people in a way that church and village hall activities may not. When trading ceased in January this year, prior to the COVID-19 lockdown, and the future of the Black Horse became increasingly uncertain, the Parish Council nominated it for listing as an asset of community value, to protect it for the long-term benefit of members of the parish, for those from neighbouring villages with no pub of their own, and for visitors from further afield. Malton Borough Council confirmed this listing in April and again in June when they considered and rejected the applicant's appeal against the listing, and reconfirmed that the Black Horse furthers the social well-being and interest of the community. It hosted all the usual activities you would expect of a rural pub. It had darts team playing in the local league, a batang team. It hosted shoot dinners, hunt meets, breakfasts, carol singing, Christmas dinners, food night, quiz nights, and hosted wakes. Importantly, it employed local people, often offering the young people of the 3 villages their first job. It had strong ties with the local B&Bs, providing evening meals for their guests. It was a thriving and popular pub. The extraordinary number of objections on the Melton Borough Council website reflects the strength of feeling of those who wish to ensure its survival. Many seemingly suspect that a small pub element is retained in the redevelopment scheme solely to meet planning requirements, but is actually designed to fail. If that is the case, it would explain the design drawbacks, lack of detail, errors and omissions in the application documents. In considering this planning application, the Parish Council had no doubt that the conversion and change of use would threaten its continued existence as a rural village pub and would be clearly incompatible with its status as an ACV, and voted unanimously against it.
30 seconds, Chairman.
Thank you very much. You timed that wonderfully. Thank you.
All right.
Do we have any questions for the speaker, members? Councillor Higgins.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. Just, you didn't mention B&Bs in the area. Do you know how many B&Bs, or do you know the numbers of beds that are offered within a radius of Grimston? That would be helpful. Thank you.
I don't know exact number of B&Bs, but there's certainly the Gorse House in Grimston, and there was Shoby Lodge, and then there's all the ones in Nether Broughton.
Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for addressing the committee this evening. Thank you. The next speaker this evening, I'll just give you time to, thank you. The next speaker this evening is Mike Petty, who's an objector. If you could bring Mr. Petty forward. What's John Illingworth doing?
Okay, we have Mr. Petty here now.
Good evening, Mr. Petty. Welcome again. You have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. In the applicant's evidence and account submission, their case for the need for change of use largely rests on Melton Local Plan Policy C7 Section 2, in that they're claiming that the existing use is no longer viable and that the prospects for reuse and or resale have been exhausted. I shall now show that their case for our 400-year-old pub is simply not true. Regarding viability, in 2017, the applicants bought a thriving destination pub business with a turnover of 300k per annum and a net profit of 45k per annum. Within weeks, the applicant's attitude and approach to business drove away loyal staff and customers alike. Their turnover plummeted with a net loss of 41k per annum. In August 2018, the pub was let to a tenant, JC Inns Limited, and the business was transformed. From a loss-making turnover of around 2k per week under the applicants, by week 3 of JC Inns' tenancy, the turnover was around 5k per week. The MD of JC Inns, Mr. John Illingworth, went into hospital for 5 months, and during that time, the pub was very poorly managed by a family member. On John Illingworth's return to the business, turnover started to climb back. Working with Mrs. Angela Millett, who brought her great energy and business zeal to the project, the business was trading again in excess of 5k per week. The applicants evicted Mrs. Millett from the pub on the 18th of January of this year, despite payment of rent until mid-February. Regarding the liquidation of JC Inns Limited, let me knock this on the head once and for all. This has been a convenient excuse on which the applicants have tried to hang their case. Businesses go into liquidation for all sorts of reasons, including financial mismanagement, which was the case here, though it suits the applicants to pretend otherwise. Regarding sale or reuse, in early 2018, the applicants attempted to sell the pub as a going concern, but set the asking price at 130k, more than they had paid, and quite arguably 250k more than the business was worth at that time. Unsurprisingly, the pub did not sell. The applicants approached the Co-op to sell the building for use as a shop or a funeral home. The Co-op rapidly turned down the offer. The premises were clearly unsuitable. Most recently, the applicants have offered the building to the community for 600k, despite their own valuer setting a guide price of just 250k. In short, the applicants mismanaged the pub.
30 seconds, Chairman.
They then mismanaged it again when they tried to run the pub as a commercial property let, and they appear incapable of selling this historical pub. Please do not take the applicant's lack of business acumen as any sort of proof of the lack of commercial viability of our 400-year-old pub. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Petty. Do we have any questions for the speaker at all this evening? No, I can't see any hands up. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Petty. Thank you. We'd like to move Mr. Petty back to the attendees. Thank you. I'll just give you a moment. Right, our next speaker is Mr. Hayden Wakefield, who is the applicant. Good evening, Mr. Wakefield.
Hello.
Sorry, you have 3 minutes to address the committee, Mr. Wakefield.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to let me speak this evening. The applicants would like to know this application was supported by a pre-planned application meeting with the planning officer, where it was discussed that residential permission will be granted for the whole premises if they submitted a brief outline drawing to show the change of use and evidence to state that the business wasn't viable. Financial loss has been shown over 3 years, not just the applicants, but also having tenants. The previous tenants went into liquidation owing thousands of pounds. If this business was such an asset to the community, the business would still be trading until 2023 when their lease would have been for renewal. The applicants are now being informed that their mortgage provider that they are not permitted to lease the business at this current time, as is under review and their terms and conditions. The business was marketed in 2018 and only two viewings were taken. It was advertised with a business agent, which was spent over £1,800 on marketing and searching for a buyer. Local businesses were approached, as well as 10 plus breweries and the cooperative, but they felt the business and their location was unviable. The local community and the parish council were made aware of the current plans and application as a meeting was had with the chair of the parish council and vice chair, and a separate meeting was held with the chair and a resident, Mr. Michael Petty, the objector, round our dining room table. With the property currently listed as an ACV, the parish have now been asked if they'd wish to purchase the property. However, no response regarding the offer has been received. With regarding to policy C7, please can the committee state how much evidence you need, as the applicants were told that submitted sufficient evidence from the case officer. The application states that Park Public House will be retained through keeping a local amenity for the community, which will act as a social hub for people's well-being. The public house will bring sustainability to the area, as well as employment for the locals. The impact on neighbour properties will be low, and parking provisions have now been submitted to highways, which will meet their guidelines, what they've set out. The applicants would like to add that the dwellings do not impact the local area, or as that's been suggested. The conservation report suggests that it will enhance the area and not have a negative impact. With regard to local need for market housing, a survey completed in 2017 states a need for 2-bedroom dwellings to be brought to the open market within the 5 years. Furthermore, in some of the objections, it states that Grimston is classified as unsustainable, but why was there permission granted for a new build in August 2019? With regard to the pub trade, according to the Morning Advertiser, 994 pubs closed in the past 12 months pre-lockdown.
30 seconds, Chairman.
Applicants are planning on spending a large sum of money to keep a facility for the community. In 2018, the parish council approached to see if the green could be used for tables and chairs for customers to use. The applicants were told that it's not to be used for any commercial use or any signage on the green that must be removed. Evidence shows the parish council didn't actually own the green at the time and have no jurisdiction over its use. This is just one example showing the lack of support from the parish and the parish council. The pub in its current format cannot return due to its insufficient support.
That's 3 minutes, Chairman.
Are you about to finish now, Mr. Wakefield?
Paragraph, I'm so sorry. The pub in its current format cannot return due to insufficient support and affect the current crisis having on the hospitality sector. The applications have not received any grants from the council, so without planning or any further development on the Black Horse, or doors will have to stay closed. With the current crisis and social distancing measures, the existing format of the business would only allow 25% of customers, which do not make that business viable.
Can I stop you now, please, Mr.
Yeah,
Faulkner, Mr. Wakefield? Thank you. Thank you very much. I think all members have received your written sort of address, so that they will have read it, so they know exactly the context of it. Any questions from members? Yes, I have 2 here. Councillor Higgins, I believe you were first to raise your hand.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for your introduction there, Mr. Wakefield. When you bought the public house prior to 3 years ago, did you get to see the books, which is processed with due diligence? And if so, was there a profit on that pub that you bought at the time? I do have a second question, so I'll ask that at this, just after that answer, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So we obviously, looking on the business, we obviously had the accounts. We didn't actually have the accounts that Mike Petty has actually submitted the 2017. We never actually get to receive those. But again, this application is based on 2 dwellings, 2 conversions, not really about that small pub. And like I said in my brief statement, we can actually downsize or restructure that business through building regulations.
Okay. That's not the question I'm asking. I'm asking, when you bought the pub, were you buying a profitable business when you bought that pub? So you've said it's not.
Yes, it was. Yeah, in 2017, three years ago, yes, it was profitable.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Next question.
My second question is, you made reference to not receiving any grants from the council. And so without planning and future development, the Black Horse and the Doors would have to stay closed. The grant is for those who either rent or run an open premises. So was the Black Horse open, which it would have entitled it to a grant of up to 25,000, or was it a closed business at that time?
It was closed. Obviously, I went back and forth with the council and obviously with emails to them. There's no actually proper clarification on the government website where it had to state it was closed. It was Mountain Borough Council's discretion.
Okay. I won't interact with the applicant on there, but I'll bring that part into debate if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you. That's one of the questions I was going to ask, so thank you for raising it. Councillor Faulkner, I believe you're next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to get some clarification, if I can, on how many people roughly would be able to fit in the existing pub, and how many people would be able to drink in the micro pub?
Again, the numbers were submitted, so pre-lockdown again, you're probably looking at between 50, 60 on the current format. And you are probably, depends at a squeeze, you're looking at probably 40 to 50 in a small place. But again, that's got nothing to do with this planning application. Really.
Well, that was I just wanted clarification of how many people could fit in the micro pub. I think.
Can I just state that it's not actually a micro pub. It's not classified as a micro pub.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Wakefield. Yeah. Thank you. If we could, thank you. Did you want to put your hand down, Mr. Faulkner, Councillor Faulkner, or do you still want to comment? Okay, thank you. Brilliant. We now have Councillor Ronan Brown, who's the ward councillor for that area. Just waiting for technology to keep up with us. Probably going too fast for it. Don't worry.
The last time when I did this, it took a few seconds for...
Yeah, it does, yeah, which is why I'm sort of waiting for it to play catch up. Good evening, Councillor Brown. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now, Chair?
We can, well, I can, yes, thank you very much. As usual, you have 3 minutes, Councillor Brown.
Chair, thank you. Okay, thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak on behalf of the community's ward councillor. This proposal, as per the officer's report, puts forward a proposal to convert an historic pub into a number of different flats and create a micro pub that will, in essence, end up being unsustainable due to floor space, in my view. The proposal shows no proven need that these houses are required in Grimston, nor has there been any attempt to prove a need, and thus it is contrary to policy SS3 of the local plan. If this proposal was approved against officer recommendation, it would lead to a detrimental impact to the life of the community, which is contrary to policy C7 of the Melton local plan, plus paragraphs 83 and 92 of the National Policy Planning Framework. As a planning authority, we should be looking to make communities more sustainable, not less, which this proposal, if it went ahead, would do. A housing needs assessment was carried out in 2017, and that did not show any need for additional market housing in Grimston. The proposal conflicts with policies SS2 and SS3 of the adopted local plan. In relation to parking, the proposal does not show adequate provision at this stage and therefore does not comply with policy D1. The Council has also recently accepted an asset of community value application from the Parish Council on behalf of the community, and this has now been registered. This will give the community the time to work up plans to see if they can maintain a pub in the village, and therefore by refusing this application, this will allow just that. As local councillor working with the community, a lot of effort has already gone into looking at options, how the pub could be reopened and even bought by the community. The pub has been run successfully for many years and has made healthy profits. When you purchase a pub, you are buying into the community, and the community now deserve the chance to be able to try and get the pub back to where it once was and serving the village and surrounding communities. The pub has been and is a key part of Grimston community, and the pub having to close was much more than it not being viable, and in my view clouds the current position. But going back to just a planning policy position, the application should not be approved, and I urge the committee to take on board the officer recommendation and refuse this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Do we have any questions for Councillor Brown this evening? Just one. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. May I ask Councillor Brown, or make a point first of all, that the applicant said it's not going to be a micro pub. That wasn't the intention, but that is between the two parties. My main question to Councillor Brown is, how long would he anticipate it will take the local community to get together, to get the finance to actually to set up an asset of community value? Because I've had experience at Bottisford, which was a dismal failure, sadly. And people will come forward and say, yes, I support that. I think that's a wonderful idea. Let's save the pub. But when you ask them even for £100, they run away. And I just wondered, are there any substantial backers for this? Because I think that is something that we do need to know. Thank you.
Well, yeah.
Do you want to respond?
Yeah. Speaking with the community, there is potentially people who would buy it at the right price as a pub in its own entity, and also there is options that have been looked into by the community, and these are going to be further discussed by the parish council at the appropriate time when they're able to convene. But there is people, if a deal could be done, I'm sure we'll be willing to meet with the owners and get a deal done. But as you will appreciate, Councillor Chandler, everybody has to be round the table and agreeing what the right price is and how that can be done. But there is people willing to work through this and willing to try and save it as an asset. And if it can't, as part of the ACV, in 6 months, that's what the community have. They've got 6 months to sort this out. And what I'm asking is, let's give the community that chance.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Mr. Power, I thought I saw your hand raised after I'd called.
Sorry, Chairman. I just didn't think we should get. I didn't think we should get too deeply into the asset of community value situation, because it simply gives the community a breathing space to try and purchase the property. But of course, the reasons for refusal are sort of quite different from that. And I think we should really concentrate on those issues that surround the officer recommendation and whether they're made out or not in the members' opinions.
Yeah, quite. Thank you very much. There's no other further question, hands raised. Right, thank you very much for that, Councillor Brown. Thank you. I think we'll have to return you back to the attendees area. Thank you. Well, we've heard the speakers this evening. Officers, do you have anything to add or to respond to anything you've heard this evening?
Yes, Chair. So there was just, I think Mr. Power beat me to it, to be honest. So there was that point there on the ACV, but also just a general point on the term micro pub, just to clarify, because in some instances, a micro pub is a completely different scenario to what is proposed here. So the proposed here is retain part of the public house, not create a micro pub, just for clarification to members.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And that's everything. Yeah, okay. Right, over to you, the members now. Councillor Higgins, I believe you've got your hand raised. Did you want to ask a question of the officers before we start the debate?
No, it's not a question to officers. It was just to start debate.
Start the debate. Okay, that's fine. Do you want to go ahead?
Okay, yeah. So there's just some points that was made during the presentations, and I just think before we go into the wider debate as well, it's important to know, because part of it came to the portfolio that I lead, which is the growth and regeneration, namely about the grant which the applicant says that they that it was this council that refused them the grant. The document that the government put out and the guidance on that, it's paragraph 12 in that government guidance, and that the business needed to be in receipt of what's called expanded retail discount on the 11th of March.
Yeah.
And as the applicant did say, the doors were closed, and as we know before, the government is not looking to support closed businesses or closed opportunities. And so from that, I'm assuming that's why there was no grant available, because there was no business to support at the time. The government isn't looking to support landlords with empty shops or commercial units as well. They've been very clear on that. Just on the other point, which I think the solicitor has said, is the asset community value, in my view, is not really pertinent to the decisions we have, because we're just being asked on its change of use. We're not trying to second guess what a community might do, and be that or not, it may not necessarily be the community who buys it. It could be anybody else out there as well. And my third point, just before we go into the larger part of the debate, which I do have more to say, is the UK in December 2011, the Office of National Statistics said the UK pub sector had expanded for the first time in over 10 years, with a net gain of 320 pubs. And various industry reports, including the Morning Advertiser, was suggesting that that sector could have added 9,000 more jobs. Now, obviously, with COVID, all bets are off. But my steer is, is we are in a new world, but that doesn't mean we need to necessarily fire sale everything at the moment. And we've got to give businesses those opportunities to enjoy that. So I was just clarifying those points for the committee, and I'm sure more debate will be had.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, just one other point I forgot to mention. There was a question on why House was granted permission in Grimston last year. I was the councillor who proposed that, and the reasons for that, and I've got them here, is they were contrary to officer recommendations and the development plan, but it was made as members were satisfied that there existed a very exceptional personal circumstances in relation to the ongoing accommodation needs of a disabled child, and a strong desire for them to remain a resident in the current community of Grimston. So I don't think they're comparable. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Well, regarding the comments regarding the grants, I do recall that there was a date to be in business for the March the 11th. So that's obviously a reason why the pub didn't receive anything, because clearly they weren't open on the 11th of March. Thank you. Do we have any other members who would like to make comment or start the debate or continue the debate even? Anybody? No? Oh, here we go. Councillor Faulkner.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, I just want to know of what was going to be remain of the public house. We're not calling it micro pub anymore, but how big is the area of this reduced size public house?
Did you want me to show you the slide
like
again?
to...
Well, will the slide have the size dimensions on?
It hasn't got the dimensions on it, no, but I can go through it once more.
That would be helpful, thank you.
I think this one's probably the better. So if you can see the green along here.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you've got here is a bar which starts along this line here, continues up and finishes here. So it's this square section here. You've then got a lobby, toilet and kitchen here. That is the cellar, and that remains as storage area. So
Okay.
all of the green area is the retained public house.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Right, I see we have a few other, oh, actually, no, we haven't. No more hands raised. It disappeared now.
We've got, I think Councillor Steadman was indicating that she wanted to.
Here we go, back again. Councillor Steadman.
I have to unmute myself now, don't I? Thank you, Chair.
Looks like it.
Yeah, I was looking at the floor area of this. Now, historically, this pub has always thrived on its food trade. And I think to reduce the footprint of the actual pub itself by what appears from those plans to be half would mean that it wouldn't survive with half the amount of covers that it used to have. So, you know, invariably that's going to make it fail. Ultimately, it's going to fail without the floor space it's currently got and the covers it's currently got.
Thank you. I think that's a matter that will only come out in time, isn't it, really? We won't know until time elapses. Thank you. Councillor Higgins, you have your hand raised again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think following on from Councillor Steadman there, it isn't the planning system or the planning realm to try and correct market failure or in terms of that. From what the applicant did say, and also the objectors have said, is previously, before 3 years ago, that the pub has been making a profit. And as I understand, obviously some accounts have been to testify for that as well. Now, obviously that business owner hasn't said anything here, and I don't know if officers have got that in any kind of evidence before, but it was confirmed by the applicant and obviously the objector as well. Also, if a property has been bought and then it's not invested in over time, it will deteriorate. Is the property market? It isn't a commodity. The building is actually a consumable asset, and you have to keep renovating it over time. And that's, especially if it's a business, you need to keep reinvigorating it from time to time. It's only the land that's the commodity value of any property asset there. And if the market has changed and it's now not worth the value it is, and I would suggest if there is no viable business on that site at the moment, it is not worth what it potentially was worth 3 years ago, because you can't buy that goodwill now because it's closed. You'll have to start the whole business up again. It isn't for this planning committee to try and correct that error. That market failure it is only worth what someone is willing to pay for it. And if there is a valuation, and I believe I've seen the valuation that was on the portal as well, an independent valuation is saying it's worth about £250,000. So it's not worth 600,000. So I think that's not necessarily here for debate either. It's not really for us to debate all those valuations, but it's not us to try and correct an issue, to try and, by the stroke of the planner's pen, to increase the asset value, so it can be corrected for the applicant. So if it's only worth £250,000 and there's no business in there, then, you know, possibly someone is saying it just needs to be attempted to be sold for £250,000. And unfortunately, and as sad as it is, it's not for us here to correct that. So I'm more on the side of the officer recommendation at the moment.
Thank you for that. Do you have any others who would like to add to the debate? We're all very quiet this evening.
Councillor Posnett.
Councillor Posnett.
Let's see.
I think you have to unmute yourself, Councillor Posnett. Hi.
Following on from what's been said, there's been one or two things that aren't really what we're looking at tonight, and are not planning reasons. I think, being as I lived for a number of years in a small village quite close to Grimston, and was a customer of the Black Horse, I think from knowing a lot of the customers that went in, the majority were the local community. And from that point of view, any proposed development would obviously result in the loss of a local community facility and a great asset to the village and the area. And it is contrary to policy C7. And also, Grimston is classed as unsustainable because of the lack of facilities that it's got. There are limited local amenities, there are limited facilities and also limited jobs. And anybody who buys a property in Grimston are going to be finding it difficulty to access anything without their own private transport. And at this moment in time, I don't see any reason to go against the officer's recommendation of refuse because of the policies that it doesn't meet SS3 and it doesn't meet policy C7. And for those reasons, I would recommend going with the officer's recommendation of refusal.
Is that a proposal, Councillor Posnett, or you're reserving that for the moment?
I'll reserve it for the moment and just see if anybody wants to join in the debate.
Councillor Steadman?
Yes, I'll basically echo what Councillor Posnett's already said, but I'd also like to highlight the applicant in his speech said there was a need for 2 or 3 bedroom properties. Now, according to our agenda, it's a borough-wide need for 2 and 3 bedroom properties. The housing needs assessment carried out in Grimston in 2017 identified no requirement for market housing at all. So therefore, I think, yes, this does strongly go against policy SS3 in the development plan and D1 as well on the parking.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes, I see your hand is raised.
All this bothers me. I feel really sad about all this. Having, when you live next to something for a long time and you enjoy what there was, and of course, for until the poolers came to the pub, it wasn't an eating pub, it was just a pub. And people did come from all around and in the villages, and they did. And it was just a drinking club, if you like. And I just I don't know which way to go. I really, really feel, perhaps I ought to just shut up, because I just feel that I don't want to see the pub go. Of course I don't want to see it go. But also, it's so difficult to actually be able to run something like this. And then, as well as the properties in the village, I do believe there are some down at the Grimston Stud being built, or I don't know whether they've all been built. So there probably isn't any need. I just can't vote on it either one way or the other at the moment. Okay. And so I just feel that I just have to, I'm just going to sit on the fence, I'm afraid. All right.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Faulkner, see your hand is raised.
I'm trying to put mine down.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, following on from what Councillor Posner said, I totally agree. It doesn't meet policy SS3. or policy C7. So I'm willing to stand aside to let Councillor Posnett propose it if she wishes. If not, I'm quite prepared to propose it or second it, to refuse it in line with officers' recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Posnett.
Chairman, if nobody else is prepared to come out with a proposal, then I will propose refusal.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let me just make a note. We have Councillor Faulkner.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Then I will second that proposal.
Okay. And Councillor, I briefly saw Councillor Steadman's hand raised. Did you put it down? Okay, right, okay. Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, I just see this as the most straightforward report where the recommendation, I can't see any policy that it's actually ticking either national or local policies which it needs to be based on. And listening to Councillor Ruth Maddox-Wright is, I think we do owe a duty to our areas as well, and pubs do reach people that, I thought it was a lovely sentence as well, that pubs do reach all people which churches and village halls may not. And it does, pubs do offer that employment for young people, especially young people who are in the rural areas who can struggle to get into the town as well. And the other part where it really does hit for me is the B&Bs, because if we do take these eateries away, the B&Bs businesses will then start to suffer, because yes, you can get your breakfast, but you want an evening meal and probably a nice pint or a glass of wine, or even a soft drink or something, and just that kind of place to relax, which isn't necessarily just a bedroom. So I think we've got to start we've been sending the message out for quite some time that we we've got the local plan in place. This doesn't hit any policy for conversion of use, change of use at all, and it's certainly not been demonstrated that this building is not viable in its own form. There might be some personal circumstances on that, and I do have sympathy for the applicants on that one. But unfortunately, we have to be guardians for the future of the borough and the villages, and pubs that have lasted 400 years to convert it in an hour's meeting. I think when it was profitable 3 years ago, doesn't sit well with me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Well, I must admit, having listened to everybody and sort of obviously read the report, done the site visit, etc., and heard all the speakers this evening, I find myself fully supporting the officer's recommendation to refuse this application. The proposed development would result in the loss of valuable community facility to the detriment of the life of the community, which is contrary to local plan policy C7, plus the conflict with our local plan policy SS3. Pubs do contribute to the sustainability of a village. But one thing I would like to say that I think in Mr. Wakefield's address to the committee, although he didn't actually get around to this particular point, he did mention that the Prime Minister had lately come out with a sort of slogan of build, 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 and to use up sort of brownfield sites, etc., for housing and shops and things. But pubs and village communities were explicitly omitted from that statement. It did not include pubs. So I think, to me, that is a very good indication that we avoid that for the moment on this one anyway. So yes, I'm willing to support refuse in line with the officer's recommendation. So does anybody else wish to contribute at all to the debate before we go to the vote? No? Okay. Well, as we have a proposal to refuse in line with officer's recommendations. So now I will go through the list of councillors alphabetically for your vote for, against or abstain. We have Councillor Bindloss first.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brown obviously isn't in. Councillor Chandler?
For the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Faulkner?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Glancy for. Councillor Higgins?
For the recommendation.
Councillor Holmes? We've gone quiet.
She's on mute.
For with reservations, but I know it's so sad.
Okay. Councillor Posnett?
Oh,
thank you.
Excuse me, for.
Okay. Councillor Smedley? Thank you. Councillor Steadman?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Wood?
For.
Thank you. Well, that application is refused in accordance with officer's recommendation. So thank you, everybody. And thank you very much for the speakers attending this evening. If you wish to leave the meeting, please feel free. You don't have to wait and hear the rest if you don't want to. That's brilliant. Right, the next item on the agenda is item 3.2, which is 19/01386 full. It's the Elms, 11 King Street, Scolford, construction of 2-storey extension. I believe that again, Louise Parker will do the officer's report on this one.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just bring up the presentation for you. So again, please can I check that you can see the presentation and also that you can hear me?
Can do, thank you.
Thank you. So the application site is located on the western side of King Street within the conservation area. The building and farmstead is considered to be an important non-designated asset, heritage asset. As such, any development must respect the existing buildings on site. The application before you seeks approval for a 2-storey rear extension to the property. This would be attached via a single-storey hallway to the main dwelling. The length of the proposal is 14 metres, with the existing house measuring 10.8 metres. The proposal has a ridge height of 9.1 metres at the highest point. The ground floor proposes a hallway along with an open plan kitchen dining room and a utility right at the edge here. The first floor will accommodate a total of 6 bedrooms, with the extension providing a master bedroom, ensuite and 2 dressing areas along with a separate staircase. To conclude, bringing the property back into use and carrying out sympathetic refurbishment is welcomed. However, in the current form, the proposed extension would divide the buildings, visually separating them with a dominant addition, and would be contrary to policies D1 and EN13 of the local plan, along with policy H6 of the Scolford Neighbourhood Plan, and therefore the application is recommended for refusal in its current form. It should be noted that revisions have been requested from the applicant in order to overcome concerns raised, but these have been declined. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do members have any questions before we hear the speaker this evening on this one? No. Okay, thank you. Well, this evening we have one speaker, and it's Zoe Cybury, who is the applicant. If we'd like to call the lady forward, that'd be brilliant. Good evening again. Can we unmute? Thank you. Good evening.
Hello.
Hello there. If you'd like to address the planning committee, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me the time to speak tonight.
That's okay.
We purchased the Elms last autumn and we're in the process of significant renovations to restore the house and make it suitable for our growing family. I'm actually expecting our 2nd child later this year. My husband and I have worked tirelessly on the renovations and we're so excited about the next stage of our plans. It has been incredibly disappointing that we've been unable to get a positive recommendation. The report seems to be based on the assumption that the farmhouse is a non-designated heritage asset. However, we have been unable to find any reference to this in your policy, nor is our house identified as such on the Schoolford Neighbourhood Plan. If you look at the slide in front of you, you can see that the Elms is identified by a blue star and the non-designated heritage assets as listed in the neighbourhood plan are marked in red. We're also confused that the report implies that we have no regard for the farmstead's historical character. This is especially untrue, given the care and attention we have taken with the ongoing renovations, which include restoring external stonework, replacing aluminium windows with traditional sashes. Our extension will follow the same principles, using reclaimed bricks, timber windows, and local stone sills. It will build on the agricultural heritage of this site, and this has been our intention from the outset. Could we have the second slide, please? We're hoping to create an extension that is reflective of the site's farming past. We're trying to preserve the farmyard feel by building a structure of a similar height to the current brick barn that will provide a new, more accessible entrance, an open plan family kitchen and boot room, and a master bedroom and bathroom above. The frontage and room proportions of the farmhouse will remain unchanged. If you look at slide 3, you can see that when approaching the village, there are only fleeting views of the back of the house from a distance of 200 metres across the fields. You can also see that the farmhouse roof and the large chimneys are clearly dominant, and we ask you to make your own judgment that the extension is subservient. What is obtrusive and detrimental to the conservation area is the array of dilapidated farm buildings that the property is surrounded by, and these will be removed as part of this application. During discussions with the council, we submitted amended plans to further reduce the ridge height of the extension by 200 millimetres, but we were told that this was insufficient. Hence, the revised plans were never adopted, nor were they uploaded to the planning portal. And therefore, the original plan is what is presented here tonight. Should the councillors feel differently, we remain happy for the lower ridge height to be a condition of planning. Slide 4, please. The house is set within its own land, and the extension will have no effect on our neighbours or the village, who are all overwhelmingly in support of the application. There is no dispute over the principle of development here. We believed we had purchased a farmhouse and land that provided a scope to renovate, extend, and improve a beautiful house, making the perfect environment to raise a family and somewhere we could become part of a community and really contribute to village life. I urge you to support our application and grant approval this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I allowed a little bit extra because it takes a few moments to ask for different slides to come forward. So thank you very much for that anyway.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions of the speaker? Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, the replacement to building where the barns are, or the barn is on there, is when you say that to raise a family, what do you anticipate that part of the building to be for? Is it for children, or is it for grandparents, or I don't know? So over to you.
Do you mean the brick barn?
That's it. Yeah.
So at the moment, we're not proposing doing anything with that, although I know there are, it is part of this application. Eventually it would become a sort of a TV room for children, but at the moment we have 1 2-year-old, so she's not quite at that stage yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? No. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Do officers wish to make any comments based on the speaker this evening? Do you have anything further to add? No?
No, nothing from me, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Well, do members have any questions of officers at all? Councillor Brown. I can see your hand raised. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it takes a few minutes for
it does, doesn't it?
my
technology,
hand.
eh?
Yeah. Exactly. This is one for you, Louise. The applicant has just said that they offered to reduce the ridge height by 200 mils, and that wasn't seen as enough or appropriate by the officers. Would you just be able to explain what the offer was and why that wouldn't be appropriate, please?
Yeah, of course. So as mentioned in the presentation, we welcome the fact that the property is being refurbished. We welcome the palette and style of materials to be used. The issue we have is that the extension is it's larger than the main house, so it would appear as the dominant feature, and therefore the extension would need to be remodelled to become more subservient to the host dwelling and allow the host dwelling to remain the focal point of the site. In terms of what that actually requires, then it is more than the 200 lower that was offered, but that would have to be a discussion further with the case officer.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bindloss.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, could we have a kind of clarification of what you meant by sympathetic in point 517? It occurs to me that if stone windowsills and reclaimed imperial bricks are being used, that is pretty sympathetic. So I'd just like to know what we mean by sympathetic, please.
Yeah, of course. So it comes back to the point, the materials in the palette are quite welcomed and breaking up the old from the new, keeping the traditional to be traditional. And then there's an aspiration to introduce red brick and render that would then obviously allow you to see which is the new build and which is the old build. But the point we're making here in terms of being sympathetic is in, again, being sympathetic to what's there existing and not dominating what's there existing. So once again, the original building remains the prominent feature within that site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. See Councillor Holmes, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. Yeah, this afternoon I was talking to somebody completely different from Scorford, and she actually she was with the neighbourhood plan, and she was one of the contributors. She told me that we were talking about something else, and she told me that. And she didn't say what is down here with to preserve and enhance the heritage asset. She didn't say that at all. She thought it ought to be put in there, but apparently it was left out. And she actually is one of the people that did the neighbourhood plan. So I'm only, I only spoke to her about probably 2 hours ago. And because I was a bit surprised when she said it. I didn't expect her to say such a thing, so I just wondered quite how that was in. That's all. And she was one of the ladies that actually was doing the neighbourhood plan. She mentioned it, so I don't know.
Okay,
that's
thank
all.
you. Well, it's obviously in there. So how it arrived is yeah,
no, well,
not up for discussion this evening, I think. Right, so I seem to have lost my place now. Do we have any other questions of officers, or should we start the debate now? Okay, any members? I say you, as I said earlier, very quiet this evening. Councillor Chandler. You're on mute.
Sorry.
That's it. You're all right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, I don't go along with the officer's recommendation here. I think this couple are being extremely brave taking on this property. We have so few farmsteads left we have old farmhouses, but they're not farmsteads because the land has gone from the farm. The big estates, they've sold off houses and they've lost their identity with agriculture. These people want to have sheep round them or beast round them, and that is a farmstead. And I fully support this. I mean, it's a major project they've taken on. And I mean, I sat, as I said at briefing on Monday, I sat at the end of Ironstone Lane, and I cannot see how possibly it's going to impinge on the views as you approach Scorford from the Melton end and Ironstone Lane. I really do, and I would like to propose that we permit this. I'll go as far as that in the earliest part of the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have Councillor Higgins next, and we know the routine. We've had a proposal to permit. Are you willing to second?
No, I'm not willing
to. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Councillor Brown, are you willing to permit?
No, I was going to make some comments.
Okay, we'll save the comments for later then. Councillor Bindloss, are you willing to second the motion to permit? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, I am, Chair. Yes.
Okay, so we have a well, actually, we do need reasons to go against officers' recommendations. So, do we have those reasons?
Yes, I think it's an extremely brave move, as was already said. I think that the property is being put together. It was dilapidated with care and with thought, and I think that we ought to be able to applaud people, young people that are coming into villages and taking on jobs like this, because at the end of the day, I think that this is something that will be better for the village, better for the town as well. And so, yeah, that would be my reasons for supporting this. I think it's a very, very brave move. And I think it's very important. Otherwise, that property could quite easily have just gone into completely into disrepair and would have ended up just another shell. Thank you.
Okay. Can we just clarify your reasons for permitting this, Councillor Chandler, please?
If I can get unmuted.
Yep, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Well, again, I think we're saving a well-known property. He was a renowned cattle dealer that lived there for many, many years. And I think it's something that it's a well-known home for somebody who was well connected with agriculture. As I've said, it is a farmstead and they wish to keep it as a farmstead. There's a big difference between living in an old farmhouse. I live in what was a farmstead, but now it's a farmhouse because the land's gone away from it, because we've had barn conversions, and there is a big difference here. And to wake up in the morning, pull the curtains back and see sheep outside your bedroom window, as long as they've not got out during the night, I think it's commendable, and it's something that we should be doing to save these old houses. I can assure you that there's no fun living in an old house because you've always got your hand in your pocket.
Right. So sorry to interrupt you, but so can I assume that you're not in agreement with officer's recommendation, and you do not think that
I think it's property we should value, and we should support this couple who want to save it, because they do. It's going to be a massive investment.
Okay, thank you. I see that Mr. Power had your hand raised. Did you want to come in?
I just wanted to say that I mean, the officer's reason for refusal is in the report, but it essentially rests on a subjective assessment. And I was expecting members who wish to move the opposite decision to say that they didn't think that the harm was as great as or that they didn't think that the harm existed or something of the sort.
Which is what I was trying to draw out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is a subjective matter, really.
It is, yeah.
Well, I thought
So-
I said that with saving it.
Okay.
And I thought Councillor Bindloss did as well.
So basically, you would like to permit it because you see the harm as not as severe as is identified in the officer's report.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Going down the list now, we have Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, for everything that's said in the proposal from the proposer and seconder, and you know, I'm with them on that in terms of how I feel about it. But you know, it's more than just how you feel, and I think we can still get the same results by working it through with the officers. It's very rare that a conservation officer is actually objecting to it, and you know, we've had where conservations aren't objecting to it. Now there was one in Great Dolby, and then that one's just dismissed because people don't like the personal design of the applicant. But here we have a conservation officer who is objecting, and quite strongly by the report here. And the reason I asked the question about what's that large building going to be used for is if there was, other than a TV room, if there was part of a family basis there, I probably would have been a bit more sympathetic to it. I think this couple absolutely are going to do a fantastic job on it, and I'm not necessarily one to design it, you know, as a committee member myself. But I think when the conservation officer so strongly has concerns about it, it's going against local plan policies here. I can't vote with the proposal. What I would do if the proposal fails, I was originally minded for a refusal to follow the officer recommendations, but I would then, listening to what the applicant said, listening to what the proposer and seconder said, I think sending it back to officers to work with the applicant again, and especially what Councillor Chandler was saying, which I do value, is getting those enhancements through, but by dialogue. It seems to me that either through, I don't know how, because I think the applicants are very reasonable, but it seems either through bad advice through the agent, I don't know. It's as if this was being ramroded straight through all the policies. And we're not there to smash up our conservation policy. I think it's fairly dangerous what we're doing, but that's my view on it. So if this fails, I will be going for a deferral and probably working with yourself, Chair, and the ward councillor as well as officers.
Thank you for that. We have Councillor Brown next.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm sympathetic, having been up in Scotland actually to what the applicant's actually trying to do. But you know, I do sit here from meeting to meeting and say, you know, whatever decisions we make, we must do so in line with our policies, and both local and national. And I have been consistent on that. And to completely go in a different direction would mean that I become inconsistent in that approach. However, I do agree with Councillor Higgins in the fact is that I think with a little bit of work between the applicant and the officers, we could come to a good compromise here. And I'm always up for compromise. And maybe I should have asked the question of the applicant as to why those sort of discussions didn't move forward and actually happen. So basically, I'm going to probably at this stage not support the recommendation. Okay.
What, the proposal, you mean?
Yeah. Sorry, the proposal.
Okay.
Sorry, that's
Thank you.
recommended.
Sorry, don't worry.
Apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Bindloss, actually, you've already addressed the committee, so can we move on to Councillor Faulkner, I think is next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've been in, after the briefing the other day, I went back to the site on the road where the photographs were taken by the cemetery, and I had a look across, and clearly those photographs were taken in the middle of winter because there's no leaves on the trees. And the view now is very difficult to actually see the application site. So I don't see that this is doing any harm in the area. So I'm going to support the recommendation, the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. If I could ask the proposer, I think really we're looking at this application merely as the house, and of course that is what we're talking about. But how many times in a village, whether it be anything to do with me or any other application in a village, apart from a village green, do we see a green area in a village? I know that lots of people in Waltham, there's a problem, and there's in other villages where when a paddock, when a field comes up, what happens? It gets built on. But this is going to be left as a field in the middle, a green space in the middle of a village. Now, to me, that has got to be some sort of gain for whether it be in Scorford, whether it be in Branston, Bottisford, anywhere. Somerby, for instance, it's so very rare that that happens. And I think that it is vitally important that we think about that, because ecologically, we have so many houses being built in villages, around villages, and we don't have green spaces. And that, to me, is a green space. The other thing, when I went up to the site and I was looking round, there's some Scorford brick there. Scorford brick, actually, as I walked round at the back. Now, it says Scorford brick on it. Now, there were two brickyards. There's one at Eastwell, at Newcomb's Corner, out of the village, and the other one was just on the Eastwell Road, not very far out of the village. So it could have been that actually house was bigger. We think it's probably about 150 years old, but the other brick, which is also Scorford brick, it could have been bigger and got it going at the back, apparently. I don't know at all, but I was just kicking about and I just saw these bricks. I wasn't shown by anybody, I just saw them. But I just would like, if for the proposer to actually put this in of the green space that's round it as well, because to me it is important, regardless wherever it is, whatever village it is. I think that is an asset to the village. I think we've all got to agree to that it is an asset in a village. We know because of this awful time that we're hearing birds that we haven't seen. I've got barn owls around me which haven't been there for years, or only occasionally. And to me, this is so important.
Thank you.
So I'd like to bring that up, please.
Right. Well, we have a list of others to. So, are you willing to add that to your proposal to permit to retain the green area? The green. I don't know what the wordings will be on that one.
Councillor Clancy, Bob Power just has got his hand up. I don't know if he wants to give some advice on that.
Hand. Yes, Bob, would you like to come in on that one, please? You're on mute.
Forgive me.
There we go. There you go.
I'm not sure what's being proposed here.
No, that's why I asked for words.
Yeah, I mean, the application is for an extension, and it's that we're simply determining.
Yeah.
I mean, if this parcel of land that Councillor Holmes is referring to, presumably, is another parcel of land adjacent to this site. It's not part of this application, is it?
Yes,
I don't know, my colleagues in planning may be able to comment.
Personally, I don't believe it is, but can we have a comment from Louise Parker?
Yes, Chair. So I think I'm getting a little confused as to what's being proposed here in terms of land. So what I would like to do is go back to the layout plan. And if you can see here, for this application, the red line is along here and goes down to an access point here. So can I seek clarification as to the area land that Councillor Holmes is referencing, please?
Is it within the red line, basically?
Am I unmuted still?
You are unmuted, yeah.
Yeah, it is around here, around the red line, but it's also the part of the whole thing. I thought that it in itself is a gain. I thought that was a gain for presumably for any community, that and that surely we're not just talking about little tiny bits. We're actually talking about a gain for a community, aren't we?
Yeah. If I could add, we are only dealing with the land identified edged red on the plan.
I understand that.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Stedman. I think you've got your hand raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I applaud the ambitions of this young family by wanting to restore this derelict farmstead and bring it into 21st century use, like Councillor Higgins, I too am very concerned by the strength of representation from our conservation officer and the fact that further dialogue was declined. And I too would say that if the proposal to permit this fails, I too would be looking for a deferment to encourage that dialogue to take place so that we can find a good compromise for both our conservation officer and this young couple to move forward with their lives.
Thank you for that. I see Mr. Power has your hand raised again. Did you want to come in again?
Sorry, Chairman, having listened to that, well, I would question the materiality of this requirement that the land around it remains unbuilt upon, but more to the point, I don't think that could be secured by condition. I think it would have to be done by planning agreement, really, if we wanted to do that. But I can't really see how it's very material to this issue, which is a proposal to extend a house.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. We have Councillor Stedman. Councillor Wood.
Yeah, I think on this, I take Councillor Faulkner's point that actually you can't see the rear aspects of the house particularly well. So actually, it isn't obtrusive in that sense. And what's being proposed would actually, as far as I can see, actually clean up the site to a certain extent in terms of getting rid of an older extension that isn't sympathetic. And because the extension's on the rear aspect, it's not actually, I don't see that it's overbearing on the original house, because anybody from the village end wouldn't actually see the extension at all, because it's at the rear aspect rather than the front aspect. If the extension was on the front of the house, I'd have a problem with that completely, because obviously then it would be as a barrier to actually seeing the original house. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't actually see how this is overbearing. Also, looking at the plans, the footprint is actually smaller than the original house, not larger. So I'm minded to support the proposal.
Thank you for that. Anybody else would like to join the debate? No. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Can we just run through what the reason is again? I'm just a bit confused on the reason, because there's been lots of other debates, and
I know. Yeah.
I'm a bit lost. Sorry.
But the reason as I understand it, the reasons for permit is the fact that the proposer and seconder of the opinion that the let me just, I have made notes here, I need to find them, that the scale and proposed extension are not as detrimental to the site as the officers have explained in their report. So they don't agree that the sort of impact on the site is as great as the officers have identified in the report, and that's why they think that the proposal should be supported. Okay, is that clear? Thank you. Louise Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Could I also request that we have suggested conditions as well, please?
Right, okay. Well, yes, we do need some conditions on this now then, if we would like, if I come back to Councillor Chandler, who proposed.
Councillor Glancy, just to make you aware that Bob Power has just raised his hand.
Okay, right, I've just seen Mr. Power's hand raised.
Sorry, Chairman, it just occurred to me that if this motion succeeds, then we can directly go to conditions and members can address conditions. But of course, if it fails, then you probably don't need to go into it, I don't think, is my thought.
I would think that the conditions would be directly up to the officers, wouldn't they? Unless there's something specific we want to see. It'd be the normal conditions that we see.
Chairman, I think you'd want to hear the officers' view if the motion was passed. I think it would be sensible to ask the officers what sorts of conditions they would seek to attach, and then members may have their own comments about, you know, whether they agree or whether there are additional conditions that they would wish to see as well.
Is that prior to the vote or following the vote?
I mean, if members are all agreed with what I'm suggesting, I don't think there's anything wrong with members saying, well, you know, we're going to approve. Well, if members wish to approve it, we're going to approve it, but we wish to consider the conditions to be attached to approval immediately afterwards.
Right. Okay, that's fine. Okay. I think that, yeah, I totally agree that is the best way to go forward. Otherwise, we'll be going through conditions and
you could spend some time when it's not when you don't need to. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. So I haven't got any more hands raised at the moment. So we have a proposal to permit, and we will define the conditions following the vote.
If appropriate. Yeah.
If appropriate.
Yeah.
If I go through the names as I do normally, Councillor Bindloss, are you for the proposal to permit? Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler?
For.
Councillor Faulkner?
For.
Councillor Glancy? Against. Councillor Higgins?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
For.
Councillor Posnett? You're on mute.
For.
Okay. Councillor Smedley?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Steadman?
Against.
And Councillor Wood?
For.
Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 6 against and 5. No, sorry, 5 against and 6 for. Am I correct, Mr. Power? Thank you. Right, that motion to permit has been carried, and now we need to define the conditions. Officers, could have some assistance with this, please. Mr. Worley, I see your hand is raised, but you're on mute.
I think it's just materials, or certainly most importantly, it's just materials.
Will it be materials in line with the submitted plans?
Yes, that's a very efficient way of doing it.
Thank you. Anything else to add, Louise?
No, I was just going to say the same standard timing plans and materials maybe.
Right, okay.
Consideration.
Okay. So it is materials in line with the submitted plans. Councillor Steadman.
Yeah, I believe there was mention of a 200mm reduced ridge height. Could we put that in there as well?
No.
Is the proposer and seconder willing for that to go in?
No.
Because it was offered at one point.
Yeah, I would go with that.
Okay.
Chairman, just a point about that.
Yeah.
I don't think it was put into the proposal and seconder, and I didn't think it was part of that vote. But if members want that,
no.
I mean that's all I suppose if we can get the 6 members who voted for it, if they're all of a mind and say yes, that's what they would want, then I think we're okay. But
the only worry I think with that is the fact that we don't have those plans in front of us. So how can we?
Yeah.
And you very probably have to stick with what's in front of us: materials, the plans, the whole lot, because you can't. I don't believe that we can actually vote for something that we haven't seen, to be honest.
You're quite right, Chairman. I forgot that, I assumed it was before us, but you're quite right. It's not, is it?
No, it's not. So I don't really think we can actually do that. So I was going to ask for the sort of proposer and seconder, but then point that out. So I don't really think we can ask for that. So very sorry, Councillor Steadman. So who have I got now? Mr. Worley, your hand is raised again.
Only because I forgot to take it down.
Okay, no worries, no worries. And who forgot?
Councillor Steadman.
Councillor Steadman. You forgot to take yours down as well.
Yeah.
And Mr.
That just
Power,
leaves
Bob,
Mr.
you have your
Power.
hand up still. Okay, so to recap, item 19/01386 is permitted by a narrow vote, and the conditions basically will refer to the plans that have been submitted regarding sort of materials, design, etc. So are we all in agreement with that? Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 3.3, as I mentioned before, that is not on the agenda this evening. It has been withdrawn. We now have item 4, which is any urgent business. I do have one item which I'd like to mention under this item, is that just take the opportunity to mention we have arranged additional planning committee meetings. These will only go ahead. These will only go ahead if it is considered necessary and there's sufficient business to proceed. The dates are the 6th of August, the 3rd of September, and the 1st of October. I believe everybody has been informed of these dates by email, so I hope that you can attend. I do understand that one councillor has said that she can't attend on the 3rd of September, but I'm trying to arrange a substitute for that particular evening. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time tonight. The time is 7:44, to be precise, on my clock anyway. Okay, so thank you very much for coming along this evening, and we'll see you